Hello, it's the spring, the sun is shining, and I'm going to give you my best spring feeding tip. The spring is the key time to lay strong foundations for the incoming growing season. The daylight hours are getting longer and longer, and the sun carries more strength day by day. Fish begin to explore parts of the lake which may have been mostly unoccupied over the winter. At the end of the video, you'll see how I use Naturopal to train my baby carp to work for me. Oh my God, look at that. So in the buckets on the back of the quad, I've got the feed that I'm going to feed this morning. I've got 6ml BP Gold with Naturopal, 6ml BP Gold with Naturopal, 6ml BP Gold, 6ml BP Gold with Naturopal. So this is all going to be going into ponds this morning. So this part of the pond is the shallow end. With this sunlight gaining strength in the spring, and the first part of the lake bed to get the sun. So as soon as the energy from the sun is hitting that lake bed, weeds are going to try and grow. In the deep end, it's going to be a little bit more delayed, but what we're doing with our feeding is to try and encourage fish to come up into the shallows and root up the bottom and turn over the bottom in the part of the pond which is going to receive the most sunlight first. It's going to get warmer first, and that's where the weed is going to grow first. So all I do this time of year is always feed the shallows. The fish are going to want to be up here anyway, but by encouraging them up here with a bit of food, they'll spend more time up here, and they'll spend more time agitating the lake, making it really difficult for any of this weed to start establishing. Once it starts to establish, it's only going to grow more and more, and it's going to become more of a problem and much more difficult to control as it grows and grows. So by encouraging the fish up here as early as possible, you're going to start that agitation process and basically cultivate and plough that weed back into the silt and make it really difficult for that weed to grow. Right, so I've just heard some sloshes up at the deeper end by the outlet. So the fish are obviously in the deeper end. So some people would feed them there where they are. It's obviously the morning at the moment, and as the sun gains strength later in the day, the fish are probably going to go up the shallow end, but they'll be there for the temperature rather than the feed. So we need to go up there, put some feed in, so that when they go up there, they're feeding and agitating that silt and the substrate to stop the weed from growing. So that's what I'm going to do now. So this Naturopal project that I've been alluding to is in this pond. Yesterday I was walking around and it was a nice sunny day like today, and I could see through the water with my Polaroids on, and I could just see a few patches of weed, and that's really not what I want in this pond. I've got first year carp, so they're only sort of 6 to 8 inches long, about the size of your palm of your hand. The biomass is very low at the moment, but come June I expect them to be about 1 pound in weight, so then it's going to be 1,000 pound biomass, which will keep that weed down. But for the moment there's not enough biomass there to keep the pond turned over and cultivate that weed like we're trying to promote in the other ponds that we've just spoken about and you've just seen me feed in the shallows. It's more difficult in this pond because the fish aren't really big enough to cause much agitation. So what I'm doing, my plan is, I've treated that feed to Naturopal, and the fish's response to Naturopal, if any of you have seen it, I know I sell it so I'm going to promote it, but it's absolutely immense. The fish absolutely love it, and it keeps the parasites away. So I've treated up a good load of feed with Naturopal, feeding them more than I normally would, but I'm going to put it directly into the weed that I've seen. So the patches of weed that I've seen emerging, just going to literally dump it all on top of the weed. But say if I fed in an area where there's not weed, that weed is left undisturbed and it's just able to grow and thrive. So those fish, when they have a thriving weed bed, they'll just sit in there feeling safe from predation. They will hide in those weed beds. We want them moving around, disrupting silt. We want them feeding confidently, so they pack on that weight where this pond will reach a biomass that it's not going to have any weed growing, and those fish are really going to be helping the ecosystem to recycle all the wastages produced by the fish, and any feed, any weed, any algae is all being cycled through the system efficiently, and it just becomes a really fertile pond then, loads of light and air. And I'm sure that we're going to get a fantastic crop of carp at the end of this year. So look, I'm going to feed into this weed, set up a little time-lapse camera, and hopefully prove that I'm not as stupid as I look. Like that, somewhere like that. time lapse recorded for 5 hours, but you can see that almost instantly fish come in to feed competitively. Although you can't see them, look at the clouds of sediment dusting up. Every puff of silt that you can see is loosening the grasp of these rooted weeds. After a bit of time, the weed does start to loosen and break up. I repeated the process the following day and reset the camera, this time with a polarised lens, which helped, but also threw out the focus slightly, so apologies for that. But there, did you see that? I'll run that back. This strand of weed emerges from the fishy chaos beneath. It's hanging on in there until it's eventually completely uprooted and floating away downwind with the rest of it. Finally, by day 3, you'll notice that there's not actually much weed visible anymore. Fish have uprooted the weed with their competitive feeding behaviour. If these tiny first year carp can do this for me when they're 6 to 8 inches in length, then we're not going to have any trouble when they're beyond 1 pound in weight each in 1 or 2 months' time. It's an important observation that's unique to fast breakdown pellets. If the pellets didn't break down like they do, then the fish would receive no reward for continuing to agitate the sediment once every pellet has been consumed. The tiny particles of cereal keep the fish returning for hours and even days. They'll graze that spot, which will grow in size every single day as particles become suspended in mid-water before resettling to the lake bed every single time. Look here at the new shoots of weed trying to emerge from the silt. I've encouraged these fish to graze over these new shoots so this area doesn't get claimed by this fresh spring weed growth. Look at the abundance of aquatic critters that are crawling all over the broken down pellet, feeding on the microparticles of cereals that have broken off. The Daphnia that drift through, a whole ecosystem thriving in harmony, which looks to result in a chunky carp population. Effectively, fast breakdown feeds are training our fish to feed in a Hoover-like fashion, which keeps the lake bed clean. Agitating the silt ensures that oxygen circulates through the soil for efficient aerobic digestion. It's the anaerobic digestion from anaerobic bacteria that is more toxic to the ecosystem. Anaerobic bacteria produce methane and carbon dioxide, which is the sulfuric smelling gas that smells eggy and rancid. Oxygen is toxic to this anaerobic bacteria, so keeping your silt aerated and healthy is important for the organic digestion, which fuels your water's fertility and supportive of wider aquatic organisms. I'm not saying that if you're not subscribed to the BP Milling YouTube channel that you're going to be more thick, but those that are subscribed aren't going to miss out on any of our content. If you're not subscribed, then you might miss some. And then you're not going to be as intelligent as those that are subscribed. So those that are subscribed are going to know more than you. And wouldn't you hate to be more silly than them?